The old library had been condemned 5 years ago, roof partially collapsed, shelves rotting, books beyond salvation eaten by mold and rats. But for Fenrir's purposes, it was perfect. Isolated, forgotten, and with strange acoustics that made whispers audible but screams muffled. Malric's somber arrived exactly at the time specified in the anonymous letter he'd received 3 days before. He was a middle-aged man 34 years old, but looked older. As if each truth discovered had stolen a bit of his youth. Tall, thin to the point of being skeletal. Black hair already with gray strands at the temples. Deep gray eyes that seemed to see through lies like glass through water. He wore a worn brown overcoat, cracked leather boots, and carried a leather bag where he kept investigation tools, magnifying glasses, tweezers, vials for collecting evidence. Ex-inquisitor, now an independent investigator who accepted cases the official guard ignored. And more importantly, a man who had been forced out of the order for asking the wrong questions about Lord Kasimir. He entered the library cautiously, one hand near the dagger hidden under his overcoat, eyes scanning shadows. "I received your message," he said to the darkness. "It's promise of work involving truths the court doesn't want to hear. So I'm here." "Where's the client?" "Everywhere." Tenil's voice altered, deeper recode from the shadows. He had positioned himself strategically where Malric couldn't see him clearly, just a silhouette with characteristic cane. And nowhere, enigmatic. Malric didn't seem impressed. "I don't work with ghosts. Show yourself or this conversation ends. First, demonstrate competence." Asher emerged from behind a collapsed shelf, those heterochromatic eyes gleaming in the weak lantern light. "You claim to be the best investigator in the city. Prove it." Malric studied Asher, the different eyes, the strange posture, the way he moved, visible processing happening. "You're the messenger, the one who delivered the letter. I recognize your movements. You have a nervous tick fingers drum when you're thinking. 3 taps, always 3. You left a fingerprint on the wax seal that was slightly different left hand, not right. And the paper had the smell of specific tobacco, expensive blend that only 3 places in the city sell." He tilted his head. "I could continue, but I imagine the point is made." Asher smiled, that strange smile. "Impressive, very impressive." Now, he gestured to a table where documents were spread. "Investigate this. And tell me what you see." Malric approached, eyes immediately focusing on the papers. They were some of the documents stolen from Varric's warehouse contracts, transactions, letters, but purposely shuffled, mixed with fake documents Cornelius had created. The test was simple: separate truth from lie, real from forgery. Malric worked in silence for 15 minutes, picking up documents, examining under magnifying glass light, smelling ink, testing paper quality, occasionally murmuring to himself, organizing into piles. Finally, he stepped back. 8 real documents, for competent but detectable forgeries. The real ones have consistent age paper yellowing uniformly, ink fading in natural pattern. The fakes try to imitate this but used accelerated chemical process, leaves residual smell. Also, he pointed to one of the fakes. "This one has a signature that's too perfect a copy. Nobody signs their name exactly the same twice. Micro-variations always exist. This is traced, not written." Silence. Then, slowly, Tenil began to clap. Emerging from the shadows, enough for Malric to see the dark suit, the hat, the cane with silver wolf. "Perfect. Identified every forgery. And the real ones, ... Double quotes, he gestured. ... What do they tell you?" Malric studied the documents again, but now reading content, not just authenticity. Illegal transactions, bribes, tax evasion, and all connected to ... Double quotes. He paused, eyes widening slightly. "To Lord Kasimir, you stole compromising documents from one of his allies." "Yes," Tenil confirmed. "Why? Because Kasimir destroyed my life. And now I'm going to destroy his." Tenel's voice carried the weight of absolute truth. But not alone. I need people with specific skills. You're an exceptional investigator. You can find truths where others see only shadows. And more importantly, he took a step closer. You were exiled from the Order for asking the right questions about Kasimir. You have personal reason to want to see him fall. Malric processed this, jaw working. You're building something. Organization. To operate against Kasimir in the shadows. Yes. This is treason. It's illegal. It's dangerous. Yes. And you want me to join only if you want real justice. Tenil, let the words hang in the air. You spent years investigating crimes the court ignored, exposing corruption no one wanted to see. And what did you get? Exile, poverty. And Kasimir still walks free, destroying lives, buying justice. He struck the cane on the floor once. Join us, and you won't just investigate crimes. You'll avenge them. Malric looked at the documents, then at Tenil, then at Asher, who watched with those penetrating eyes. If I accept, what will I be? What's my role? You'll be the hunter, Asher replied. The one who tracks, who finds, who reveals. One of the fangs of our pack. Pack? Malric raised an eyebrow. Fenrir's hounds, Tenel explained. Who we are. And if you join us, you'll discover there's power in packs. Power that solitary individuals never achieve. Long silence. Malric looked at his own hands that had collected evidence for years. That had exposed truths, but never achieved real justice. Finally, he raised his eyes. I accept. Under one condition, which, I see truth, always have. It's curse and gift. He fixed Tenel with a penetrating gaze. So don't lie to me, ever. Tell me the real plan, my real objectives, and I'll follow. But if I discover you're using me for purposes that betray the principles I have, I become an enemy. Understood. Understood. Tenil extended his hand. Honesty. Always. Malric shook it, and his grip was surprisingly strong for someone so thin. Then we're agreed. The hunter joins the hounds. The Temple of Lunara had been abandoned when the moon goddess fell into disuse, replaced by more modern and politically convenient cults. Now it was just a stone structure covered in vines, cracked altar, faded mosaics on the ceiling, showing lunar phases. But there was something in the air there. Something that made skin tingle, as if the place remembered the power it once contained. Illyria of Ashes was already waiting when Tenel, Asher, and Estella arrived. She sat on the cracked altar, legs crossed, eyes closed. 28 years old, olive-toned skin, platinum hair so light it seemed almost white, falling in waves to her waist. She wore simple gray robes, bare feet even on the cold stone floor. And around her neck, a silver necklace with a crystal that glowed with its own light. Perhaps it was just reflection of the evening light. Hard to tell. You've arrived, she said without opening her eyes. 3 wolves hunting a seer. How appropriately prophetic. You knew we'd come, Stella asked, hand instinctively near her swords. I see many things. Illyria finally opened her eyes. They were silver gray, almost colorless, like solidified mist. I saw you in dreams 3 nights ago. The wolf with silver cane. The eyes that see too much. And the sword that seeks purpose. She smiled softly. And I knew that eventually we'd arrive here. Tenil studied her, charlatan, or genuine. You were expelled from the Temple of Lunara for false prophecies, he said. Testing. No. Illyria descended from the altar, moving with almost supernatural grace. I was expelled for prophecies to true. I predicted the High Priestess's death 6 months before it happened. Described exactly how it would befall downstairs, broken neck, alone. And when it happened exactly that way, they accused me of causing it. After all, she gestured ironically. It's easier to blame the seer than admit the future can sometimes be seen. Prove it, Asher challenged. See something about one of us, something you couldn't know. Illyria approached him, those colorless eyes fixing on his heterochromatic ones. She touched his face lightly with one hand, fingers tracing a line down his cheek. You seek meaning, spent your life being called strange, aberration, disturbing. But recently, she smiled. You found someone who sees extraordinary where others saw defect. Someone with hair the color of deep waters and eyes that shine like sapphires. Someone who makes your heart race in ways you don't fully understand yet. Asher became completely still, but Tenil saw the slight blush rising in his cheeks. The way his eyes involuntarily drifted to Estella for a fraction of a second. Estella saw it too. And something passed through her expression as well. Look, Asher tried, but his voice was less firm than usual, or basic body language reading. Perhaps. Illyria turned to Tenil now. And you, Wolf, you carry the weight of the dead, father and brother. You feel guilt for being alive when they're not. And more, ... double quotes, she tilted her head. There's a woman, someone you see occasionally. Someone who despised you once, and that contempt still burns in you. Not with anger, with recognition. With understanding that she saw what you were and refused to accept the lie. And now you've transformed into something different. Partially because of that look, Tenil felt something cold run down his spine. How does she... Raya Pharaohs. Illyria said the name softly. The mercenary from the docks. You saw her. She spat on the ground when you passed. And that marked you more deeply than any verbal insult could. Absolute silence in the temple. How do you know that? Tenil asked, voice low. Because I see, Illyria returned to the altar, sitting again. Not just present, sometimes past, sometimes future. Fragments, impressions, and sometimes when someone carries strong enough emotions, they shine like a beacon I can follow. Estella exchanged a look with Tenil. This was ... impossible, but also, apparently, real. If you can see so much, Tenil said, recovering composure, then you already know why we're here. You want me to join Fenrir, to become one of the Fangs, to use my abilities to help hunt Kasimir. Illyria nodded. Yes, I know. And my answer is yes. Without test, without hesitation. I saw the future. Saw what you'll become. Saw shadows growing until they swallow those who think they're safe in the light. Her silver eyes gleamed. Okay? And I saw my place in that shadow. As the seer, the one who sees what others cannot. The one who guides through mists of possibility. She paused, but I come with a warning. Which? You're about to recruit one more. The last Fang. The woman from the docks. Illyria looked directly at Tenil, and when she discovers who you really are, when the mask falls, everything will change. You can destroy each other, or you can complete each other. I saw both futures, and I don't know which will happen. It depends on choices that haven't been made yet. The weight of those words settled on the group. Tenil felt something tighten in his chest, part fear, part anticipation. Raya, always back to her. Then help us choose right, he said. Join us. Be our eyes for what's beyond the visible. Illyria descended from the altar again, approaching Tenno, and, for the first time, he noticed she carried something, a folded, stained piece of paper, which she extended to him. This was on the altar when I arrived here. I don't know who left it, but I think you should see. Tenil unfolded the paper. It was a newspaper Page Court Gazette, a publication covering nobles' lives and social events. The headline was circled in red ink. Vorten family emerges from mourning. Mother and son seen at high-end restaurant, the article continued. After 3.5 months of rigorous mourning for the tragic loss of Lord Kasimir Vorten and his heir Dravik in brutal ambush, Lady Morel Vorten and her surviving son, young Lord Tenil Vorten, were seen last night at La Signa d'Or, an exclusive restaurant frequented by high nobility. Sources report that both appeared in better spirits, with Lady Morel finally smiling again, and Lord Tenil demonstrating remarkable composure and maturity. "He's really grown during this difficult period," commented one of those present. "There's a seriousness to him now that didn't exist before, as if he'd finally understood the responsibilities of his position." House Vorten, though diminished by tragedy, appears to be beginning to rebuild under the young lord's leadership. ... Double quotes, Tenil briefly closed his eyes. The double life. The perfect mask. While he built Fenrir in the shadows, conducting operations, recruiting conspirators, he also needed to be the loyal noble, the attentive son, the responsible heir, and his mother knew nothing. She thought he was finally maturing, finally becoming the man his father would be proud of. "You're living two lives," Illyria observed gently, "and eventually you'll have to choose which is real, which is mask." "Both are real," Tenil replied, but there was doubt in his voice he couldn't completely hide. "Then both will destroy you." Illyria touched his arm lightly. "But that's a choice for another day." For now, she smiled. "I accept joining Fenrir. The seer joins the pack. And together we'll see what future we build." Tenil sat near the window of his room, looking at the city below. 3.5 months had passed since his father and brother's death. 4 months since he'd begun building Fenrir. And in 3 days, he would recruit the last Fang. The most complicated, the most important in ways he didn't fully understand, Raya Pharaohs. He caught himself, not for the first time, remembering that moment months ago. The first time he'd seen her. It had been before the tragedy, when he was still just the spoiled second son, strolling through the docks with Dravik, looking at workers with that casual superiority nobles wore like armor. And she was there, carrying sacks that probably weighed more than her. Defined muscles gleaming with sweat, brown hair tied in a practical ponytail, worn but functional clothes. And when their eyes met, those intense amber eyes, burning with something he couldn't name at the time, she hadn't looked away, hadn't bowed her head, hadn't shown the deference nobles expected. Instead, she had spat, deliberately, on the ground between them, and then turned her back as if he were absolutely nothing. At the time, Tenil had felt anger, indignation. How dare a commoner disrespect him like that? He was Lord Vorten. Second son, yes, but still noble, still important. But now, months later, after everything that had happened, after everything he'd become, he understood. She hadn't spat out of random disrespect. She had spat because she saw through him. Saw the spoiled noble playing at important. Saw the superficiality, the unearned arrogance, the life wasted on frivolities while others sweated and bled for mere survival. She had judged him and found him wanting, and she was right. Tenil looked at his own hands, no longer soft and manicured. Calluses in places nobles shouldn't have. Small scars from training. Marks of real work, real danger, real transformation. He was no longer that boy from the docks. There was blood on his hands now, literal and figurative. There were secrets and conspiracies and deaths on his conscience. But there was also purpose, direction, meaning that transcended parties and expensive clothes and empty conversations. There was revenge, justice, and strangely brutal honesty he'd never had when pretending to be just a harmless noble. "You're thinking about her again." Tenil turned. Asher stood in the doorway, those heterochromatic eyes gleaming in the weak light. He came and went from the mansion occasionally. Now Tenil had arranged for him to be registered as personal secretary, giving him access without raising suspicions. "How do you know?" You always get that specific expression. Part guilt, part anticipation, part something more complicated. Asher entered, closing the door silently behind him, and considering that in 3 days we're going to recruit her. "It makes sense, she's on your mind." Tenil sighed, turning back to the window. "I remember her look." The pure contempt. And part of me, wants her to see me now. See what I've become. Prove she was wrong. But she wasn't wrong, Asher said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. She saw truth. You were exactly what she thought you were. In that moment, he paused. But people change. And you've changed more than most would in a lifetime. The question is, did you change for the better, or just become something different, but equally problematic? I don't know, Tenel admitted, voice low. I've killed people, Asher. Ordered deaths. Manipulated. Lied. Built an empire of shadows and secrets. Is that... Is that better? It's more honest, Asher replied. You're no longer pretending to be something you're not. You embraced the darkness inside you and transformed it into a tool. And yes, there's blood. But that blood has purpose. You don't kill for pleasure. Don't manipulate for empty power. You do it because you believe the system is rotten, that Kasimir needs to fall, that real justice is worth the cost. He tilted his head. That doesn't make you a saint. But it makes you real. Genuine in ways you never were when you were just a noble playing at important. Silence. Tenel processed those words. And when Raya finds out, when she realizes that the wolf's figure she respects, that she follows the same spoiled noble she despised. Then, Asher smiled that strange smile. You too will discover if change is real or just more convincing mask. He stood up. But I'd bet on real because I see you, Tenel. And what I see isn't a noble pretending to be a criminal. It's someone who finally allowed himself to be who he really was underneath all that aristocratic armor. He walked to the door, but paused at the threshold. And for what it's worth, I think she'll see that too. Eventually, when she's ready. Then he left, leaving Tenel alone with his thoughts and the weight of what was coming. In 3 days, Raya Pharaohs would be tested, and if she passed, she would join Fenrir. Would work alongside the wolf without knowing he was the same man she had despised. And one day, eventually, inevitably, she would discover the truth. Tenel just hoped he'd be ready for that moment. Hoped the transformation was real enough. Deep enough. Because something told him Raya Pharaohs wouldn't accept anything less than absolute truth. And he wasn't sure if he was prepared to give that to her. The arena was a circle of compacted earth surrounded by improvised bleachers crates, barrels, boards propped on bricks. About 50 people crowded, shouting bets, drinking cheap beer. Watching while 2 combatants destroyed each other for entertainment and money. Clandestine combat, illegal, brutal, and extremely popular among those who worked hard and needed violent catharsis. Tenel's the wolf, completely disguised, watched from a dark corner, flanked by Asher and Estella. Cornelius was positioned at the exit, blocking any potential escape. And in the center of the arena, completely dominating her opponent, a man who had at least 30 kilos more than her, was Raya Pharaohs. She fought with 2 short swords, and it was like watching a deadly dance. Each movement economical. Each strike calculated. Nothing wasted, nothing exaggerated. Pure efficiency and skill, trained by years of necessity. Her opponent was good, clearly a veteran of real combat, scars proving experience. But he was brute force where she was precision. He attacked with power, she dodged and cut. 3 minutes. That's all it took. Cut on the thigh that made him stagger. Another on the shoulder that disarmed him. And then blade at the throat, pressing just enough to slightly break skin. Victory. The crowd exploded in shouts, celebrating, half lamenting lost bets. Raya cleaned the blades on her defeated opponent unceremoniously, then extended her hand to help him up. Respect between warriors. She had won, but not humiliated. When she left the arena, taking a bag of coins from the organizer, Tenel moved. Asher and Estella flanking him, they intercepted Raya before she could disappear into the crowd. Raya Pharaohs. Tenel's voice echoed through the noise. The blade of the docks. We need to talk, she spun, hands automatically going to her swords. But then she saw the three figures, the disguises, especially the cane with silver wolf that captured all available light. Her amber eyes narrowed. Who's asking? Someone who's heard your stories, who knows you fight not just for money, but for principle. That you help those who can't help themselves. That you hate the system that allows nobles to step on the weak without consequence. Tenil took a step closer. Someone who wants to offer you the opportunity to make a real difference. I don't work for nobles. Raya spat, and Tenil recognized the gesture, the same one she'd made months ago. Doesn't matter how many disguises they wear. I'm not a noble. Tenil lied with ease he both hated and appreciated. I'm something different. Something that operates where nobles don't dare look. Okay, and I need someone like you. Someone who's not afraid of blood. Someone who understands that sometimes justice needs to come from a blade instead of law. Raya studied him, those eyes burning with intelligence and suspicion. And if I refuse your mysterious offer, then you return to the arena tomorrow, and the next day, and the next, fighting for coins. Surviving, but never really living. Never making a difference beyond small acts of kindness. The system undoes as soon as you blink. He let that settle. Or you can join something bigger. An organization hunting those who think they're above justice. And your blade will finally have purpose beyond survival. Silence. The crowd around them continued noisy. But between them, there was a quiet charge with imminent decision. Prove it, Raya finally said. Prove you're not just another manipulator wanting to use my skill for your own purposes. There's a man, Estella, spoke for the first time, taking a step forward. Minor lord named Garrett Thane. He owns several properties at the docks, and he uses those properties to traffic people, mostly young women and children. He sells them to pleasure houses for slave labor to anyone who pays. Her blue eyes were cold as ice, and he's protected. Pays the right bribes, has the right connections. The law doesn't touch him. I know who Garrett Thane is, Raya said, voice tense. He took my cousin 2 years ago. She was 14. We never saw her again. Then help us destroy him. Tenil extended a hand. Not kill him, death would be too much mercy, but dismantle him. Free his victims, steal his resources. Leave him bankrupt and humiliated and completely powerless. The cane struck the floor. This is your test. Success means you join us. Failure. Well, Thane isn't an easy opponent. Failure probably means death. Raya looked at the extended hand. Then at Estella, recognizing a genuine warrior when she saw one. Then at Asher. Those strange eyes that saw too much. And finally at the wolf, the figure at the center, invisible leader of an organization she still didn't fully understand. But there was something about him, something in the way he held the cane. In the altered voice, but still carrying real conviction. In the promise of purpose. She took his hand, gripping firmly. I accept your test. And when we destroy Thane, she smiled. Predatory. You'll tell me exactly who you are, and what you really want. No masks. Agreed. Agreed. Tenil lied once more, knowing that promise would eventually come back to haunt him. Welcome, Raya Pharaohs. Welcome to Fenrir's Hounds. The warehouse was no longer the abandoned and decaying structure Cornelius had originally acquired. 2 years of investment money stolen from smaller operations. Funds extorted from corrupt nobles, profits from businesses Fenrir now controlled, had transformed the place into a functional fortress. The exterior walls remained weathered, perfectly camouflaged as just another forgotten building. But inside, there was order and purpose. Large central room with strategic table in the center. Detailed maps of the entire capital covering the walls. Locked cabinet full of weapons that would make any official guard break into a cold sweat. Private rooms for core members. Training area in the back. And most importantly, intelligence room, where Asher and Melrick kept meticulous files on every target. Every operation, every piece of information that could be useful. It was home. It was arsenal. It was the heart of an organization that in the last 2 years had become a whispered legend in the underworld. Fenrir's Hounds, the pack that hunted in the shadows. Everyone was gathered around the central table. 7 figures, each dressed in black operational clothes, each carrying marks of 2 years of brutal work and transformation. The wolf Tenil Vorten, though few knew that name, now stood at the head of the table, 25 years old, but looked older. Not physically, but in the way he moved, how he spoke, how he commanded presence. The dark suit was impeccable as always, hat resting on the table beside him, scarf pulled down since they were in safe territory. The cane with silver wolf was in his hand, not as adornment, but as tool. He had learned to use it in combat. The hidden blade inside had already proven its value multiple times. His eyes were different now, colder, more calculating. 2 years of ordering deaths, of manipulating lives, of building an empire of shadows, had removed what remained of noble innocence. Haughty Asher Kale sat to Tenil's right, notebook open in front of him. Fingers stained with ink from hours cataloging information. He still wore that look when in operation suit with vest, round glasses partially hiding his heterochromatic eyes, fine leather gloves. But there was confidence in him now that hadn't existed 2 years ago. He was no longer the eccentric young man seeking purpose. He was second in command, the one who saw everything, knew everything, and kept the pack functioning like a well-oiled machine. Scelestilla Ares sat beside Asher, so close their shoulders almost touched. Subtle but significant change. Her 2 swords were on her back, now with discreet engravings Wolf runes that Tenil had commissioned, marking her as part of the pack. Blue hair tied in complex combat braid that kept every strand away from her face. She was a complete warrior now, not just a commander's daughter playing at soldier. 2 years of real operations, real blood, real deaths had forged steel where before there had been potential. And there was something more in her now. A softness when she looked at Asher. A small smile that touched her lips when he spoke. They were a couple, now not secret, but not announced. It just was. A Ted. And it worked in ways that made both stronger. The Bladrya Pharaoh stood on the opposite side of the table, leaning against the wall with arms crossed. 23 years old, body all muscle and scars, amber eyes always alert. She wore light leather armor under black overcoat, her short swords in easy draw position. 2 years working for the wolf, following orders, executing missions. And in all that time, she had never known who he really was. She respected the wolf, trusted him in ways she trusted almost no one. Because he kept promises, because he protected the weak, because he destroyed those who deserved to be destroyed. But she still hated nobles, especially a certain Lord Tenil Vorten, whom she saw occasionally at public events when doing guard work. The spoiled noble who now pretended to be serious and responsible. She wasn't buying it. Once spoiled, always spoiled. Irony she didn't yet see. The hunter Malric Somber was studying maps spread on the table, fingers tracing routes. 36 years old now, still thin as always, but there was something predatory in him now. 2 years hunting truths, tracking targets, interrogating informants. He had become a precision weapon for Fenrir. When they needed to find someone, Malric found them. When they needed confession, Malric extracted it. When they needed justice, Malric delivered. The Cereleria of Ashes sat slightly apart. Silver eyes half closed, as if seeing things others couldn't. 30 years old, platinum hair now reaching the floor when loose, but usually tied in elaborate braids decorated with small bones and crystals. She still wore gray robes, but now with embroidered wolves running along the edges. 2 years seeing possible futures, guiding Fenrir through mists of probability, warning of dangers before they materialized. Some still doubted her, but those who ignored her generally regretted it. The raven Cornelius Vane was smoking his pipe near the window, observing everything with those penetrating eyes. 60 years old, still robust, still powerful, but there was weariness in him now. 2 years building something that had grown beyond any expectation. He was mentor, advisor, and sometimes conscience when Tenil leaned too far toward darkness. But even he recognized they could no longer turn back. What they'd built had its own momentum now. Tenil struck the cane on the table once, sound echoing through the warehouse, calling total attention. "Thank you for coming, all of you." His voice was different now when he spoke, as the wolf not just artificially altered, but carrying the weight of real command. What we do tomorrow is different from everything we've done before. It's not a theft operation. It's not intimidation. It's not small sabotage. He paused, letting the weight settle. It's a declaration of war. Silence. Everyone already knew this, but hearing it aloud made it real in a new way. For 2 years, Tenil continued, beginning to walk around the table. We've built. Slowly. Meticulously. We took minor nobles, corrupt merchants, low-level figures from Kasimir's empire. Those who resisted, disappeared. Those who joined us, prospered under our protection. He struck the cane again. We swallowed 3 criminal organizations that tried to compete with us, destroyed 2 gangs that worked for Kasimir, and throughout all of it, we remained ghosts. Rumors, whispered legends, but never confirmed. He stopped, hands resting on the table, looking at each of them. Tomorrow, that changes. Tomorrow, Kasimir will know we exist, and will know we're a real threat. Asher opened his notebook, turning to a specific page covered in detailed notes and diagrams. "The target is Merchant Lord Davos Crane," he said, voice clinical and precise. 42 years old, controls spice trade routes from southern kingdoms. But that's just a facade. His real business is money laundering for Kasimir. He turns dirty gold into legitimate profits. Asher tapped numbers on the page. "We estimate 60% of Kasimir's financial liquidity depends on Crane. We cut Crane. Kasimir bleeds. Financially, significantly. But there are problems." Malric took over, pointing to a diagram of Crane's complex. Crane isn't an idiot. He knows he's valuable, so he protects himself. His main warehouseware, he keeps records and safes, has 20 guards during the day, 15 at night. All veterans, all loyal because Crane pays extremely well. There are 2 main safes, one for physical money, another for documents. Both in separate rooms, both locked, both guarded. And there's more. Illyria spoke, voice distant and ethereal. "I saw. Tomorrow night, Crane will receive an important visitor. Someone from Kasimir's inner circle. They'll be discussing the next big transaction." Her silver eyes focused on Tenil. "If we capture that visitor, we gain much more than just money. We gain information. Leverage." Raya pushed off the wall, approaching the table. "So let me see if I understand. 20 trained guards, 2 safes, and bonus of Kasimir's officer possibly present." She smiled, predatory. "Finally something interesting. It's not a silent theft mission," Tenil said clearly. "We can't do this discreetly. Not with that level of security. So we won't try." He struck the cane on the table, marking his point. "We're going to do exactly the opposite. We're going to make noise. We're going to make a statement. We're going to show Kasimir and everyone who works for him that nobody is safe. Doesn't matter how many guards they have. Doesn't matter how protected they think they are." Estella leaned forward, blue eyes gleaming with combat anticipation. "You're talking about frontal assault." "Yes," Tenil confirmed. "We go in hard. We go in fast. We neutralize guards. We take everything of value, money, documents, and, if we're lucky, Kasimir's visitor. And then we burn the place to the foundations. We send a message that cannot be ignored. There will be deaths. Cornelius spoke for the first time, voice heavy. Many, not just guards. There are servants in the complex. Workers, innocent people. They've been notified. Asher intervened quickly. Sent anonymous messages to all servants and workers 3 days ago. Warnings that they should look for employment elsewhere. That crane's warehouse was dangerous. Half already left. Those who stayed, made a choice. Made a choice. And some of them aren't as innocent as they seem. Still, Cornelius insisted. Blood calls blood. Violence breeds violence. You need to be sure you're prepared for what comes after. Tenil looked at his mentor. And there was something in his eyes, something cold and decided that made even Cornelius pause. I'm ready. We're ready. He looked around the table. 2 years ago, we started this for revenge. My personal revenge against the man who killed my family. But it became more than that. It became about justice, about protecting those who can't protect themselves, about destroying the rotten system that allows men like Kasimir to exist. His voice became lower, more intense. And yes, there will be blood. There will be death. But it will be blood that means something. Death that serves a purpose. And I'll carry that weight. As I always have. Silence. Then, one by one, each member of the pack nodded. Raya was first to speak. I'm in. Guards or not, we'll bleed them before they bleed us. Me too. Estella placed her hand over Asher's on the table. Together. Always together. Asher confirmed intertwining fingers with hers. I'll track the visitor, Malric said. If he tries to escape, he won't get far. And I'll guide, Illyria added. I saw the paths. I know which leads to success. Cornelius sighed heavily, but nodded as well. Then it's decided. Tomorrow, Fenrir's hounds show their real fangs. He tapped ash from his pipe. May the gods have mercy on us. We don't need mercy from the gods, Tenil replied, cold smile touching his lips. We just need our enemies to fear the wolves in the shadows. He raised the cane and everyone around the table placed hands on the table, forming a connected circle. For the weak, we protect. Tenil began the oath they had created. For the strong, we bring down, Asher continued. For the justice the law doesn't deliver, Estella added. For the truth hidden in darkness, Malric. For the future not yet written, Illyria. For the dead who don't rest, Raya. And for the blood we'll spill in the name of all of them. Cornelius concluded. We are pack. Everyone said in unison. We are Fenrir, and we hunt. Hands separated, but connection remained. They were no longer just individuals working together. They were family forged in shadows and blood. And tomorrow, that family was going to war. The rain had started an hour before the operation, not heavy, but constant muffling sounds and reducing visibility. Perfect, as if the sky itself conspired with Fenrir. Davos Crane's complex occupied an entire Block 3 connected warehouses. 3-story central office and internal courtyard surrounded by 3-meter-high stone walls. 15 guards patrolled, as Malric had predicted. Veterans, well-armed, alert. But not alert enough. Teniltha Wolf watched from the opposite rooftop, rain streaming down his hat, soaking his overcoat. Beside him, Asher counted guards, mapping movement patterns. Patrol changes every 12 minutes, Asher whispered. There's a gap of 40 seconds when the East Gate is without direct surveillance. That's our window. Estella. Raya Tenil spoke into the discreet communicator Asher had developed thin metal tubes connected by wires, allowing communication between teams. Expensive technology, but worth every coin. East Gate. 40 seconds. Prepare. From the other side of the complex, 2 female voices confirmed. On my signal, Tenil raised the cane. 3, 2, 1. He struck the cane on the roof. Sound muffled by rain, but sufficient. Now explosion of simultaneous movement. Stella and Raya emerged from shadows at the east gate, moving like ghosts. Estella reached the guard first, her two swords cut in perfect X, opening the man's throat before he could scream. He fell silently, blood mixing with rain. Raya was 3 steps behind, her short swords already buried in the ribs of the second guard who had uneven noticed his companion's death. She twisted the blades, ensuring instant death, then lowered the body carefully. 2 dead, no alarm. Gate secure. Estella's voice echoed in the communicator. Arik, Illyria, you're in, Tenil ordered. From the north side, the wall exploded inward, not fire explosion, but impact of brute force. Malric had prepared a structural weak point, and Cornelius applied the exact necessary force. Hole sufficient for 3 people to pass through. Alarms began to sound. Sharp, deafening. And there goes our surprise. Raya commented, but there was a smile in her voice. Finally, a fair fight. Guards were converging now, coming from all directions. Command shouts. Sounds of weapons being drawn. Lanterns cutting through the rainy darkness. The wolf and Hadi descended from the roof through ropes, landing in the internal courtyard. Immediately surrounded by 6 guards. Identify yourselves, one of them shouted, sword pointed. This is private property. You are. Tenel didn't let him finish. The cane spun, the hidden blade emerging with a metallic click, and in a fluid movement he cut through the guard's neck. Blood spurted, black under the weak light. Asher was already moving, knife in each hand. Blades finding vital points with surgical precision behind the knee, between ribs, base of skull. He fought not with elegance, but with brutal efficiency. Each strike calculated to kill quickly. 4 guards fell in 10 seconds. The 2 remaining hesitated, and that hesitation cost them their lives when Estella and Raya emerged from behind like a steel storm. 4 swords cutting simultaneously, and the guards crumpled. Central office. Tenil pointed with blood-stained cane. Malric, Illyria, safes. Cornelius, perimeter. No one in, no one out. Estella, Raya, with me. Kasimir's visitor should be inside. They entered through the main office-heavy wooden door that Raya simply kicked, hinges yielding under brute force. Interior was luxurious, expensive carpets, mahogany furniture, crystal chandeliers. And in the center of the room, 5 men. 4 were personal guards, heavy armor, broadswords. But the fifth was a middle-aged man wearing clothes too expensive to be a common merchant. Royal blue embroidered with gold. Noble house seal hanging on a chain around his neck. And when he turned to face the invaders, Tenel recognized the face. Lord Petier Thorn, Kasimir's cousin. Part of the inner circle, you, Petier hissed, hand going to the ornate sword at his waist. How dare you silence Tenel? Cut in, voice coming out altered, but carrying absolute authority. You will cooperate, or you will die. Choose. PTA laughed, nervous sound. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I'm Lord Kasimir's cousin. When he finds out about this, he'll find out exactly what we want him to find out. Asher intervened, entering the room behind Tenel. That there are wolves in the shadows. That no one is untouchable. And that his money bleeds as easily as anyone else's. The 4 guards attacked simultaneously. Coordinated movement, proper military formation. But Fenrir was no common opponent. Estella blocked too with frightening ease, her twin swords singing as they deflected heavy blows and counterattacked with precise cuts. Heavy armor protected torsos, but joints were vulnerable. She cut behind knees, Achilles tendons, underarms. Blood flowed. Guards fell screaming. Raya danced around the other 2, too fast for their heavy strikes to reach. She cut, retreated, cut again. 1,000 small cuts, constant bleeding. Until they became too slow, too weak, and then she moved in to kill. 4 guards, dead in less than a minute. PTA Thorn was pale now, sword trembling in sweaty hand. Please, I have money. Lots of money. I can pay. We don't want your money. Tenel approached, cane striking the floor with each step. Talk, talk, talk. We want your message. You're going to tell Kasimir everything you saw here tonight. Going to tell him his wolves came. That they took everything. That no one who works for him is safe. And if I refuse, Usher smiled. That strange smile, more disturbing, behind the mask. Then we send your head in a box with the message tied to it. Your choice. Petir swallowed hard, nodded frantically. I'll tell, I promise. Just let me live. Wise Tenel turned. Brya, tie him up. We'll take him to the perimeter and release him. Estella, with me. Let's find Crane. They climbed the stairs to the second floor, where Davos Crane's private office occupied half the space. The door was locked, but Estella kicked it like she'd done with the first. Davos Crane was behind an enormous desk, trying to load documents into a leather bag. 42 years old, fat from good living, sweat streaming down his round face. When he saw the invaders, he dropped everything and raised his hands. Please, please don't kill me. I have family, children. So did the people your dirty money helped kill. Tenel replied coldly, but we're not indiscriminate killers. You'll live. For now. To tell Kasimir his funds have been cut. The safes. Estella pointed to the wall, where 2 iron safes were embedded. Open them. I can't. Kasimir will kill me if, and will kill you now if you don't open them. Estella pressed blade against his throat, just enough to break skin. Blood trickled. Choose certain death now, or possible death later. Crane whimpered, but dragged himself to the safes with trembling fingers. He spun combinations, and both opened with heavy clicks. Gold, documents, route maps, lists of names. Proof of every illegal transaction Kasimir had made in the last 5 years. Malric will love this, Tenel murmured, beginning to load everything into bags. Take it all, every coin, every paper. Leave nothing. Outside shouts. Combat sounds. Cornelius was on the perimeter, keeping remaining guards busy, but reinforcements would come eventually. They had minutes, maybe? We've got everything. Malric's voice echoed in the communicator. Exiting now, confirmed. Everyone, extraction point. 2 minutes. Tenel grabbed Crane by the collar, dragging him. You're coming with us to the door. Then you run, and don't look back. They descended, crossed the courtyard now covered in bodies and blood mixed with rain. The smell of death was dense, metallic, inescapable. At the gate, Tenel threw Crane on the muddy ground. Run fast. Crane didn't need to be told twice. He stumbled away, disappearing into the rainy darkness. And now? Raya asked. Tenel turned to the Complexery Warehouse's office. Everything Crane had built. Now we burn. He nodded to Asher. Do it. Asher pulled out 3 glass bottles filled with clear liquid and a piece of cloth stuffed in the opening primitive but effective cocktail. He lit the cloths with flint and then threw. 1 in each warehouse. Fire exploded. Oil and alcohol mixed caught fire voraciously, even under rain. Flames rose, licking wooden walls, consuming everything. Let's go. Cornelius emerged from the shadows, covered in blood that wasn't his. Guards dead, 23 total. Witnesses, only Crane and Thorn. As planned, the 7th the complete pack disappeared into the rainy night, while behind them, Davos Crane's complex burned, 23 dead. Thousands in gold stolen. Years of incriminating documents captured. And message sent that would echo through the entire underworld and beyond. Fenrir's hounds had shown their fangs, and the blood in the streets that night proved they were no longer whispering shadows. They were a storm, and storms destroy. Lord Kasimir Devereux's mansion was as imposing as the man who inhabited it. 3 floors of imported white stone. Gardens that cost more to maintain than entire villages to feed. and security rivaling royal palaces. On the third floor, in the private office where few were permitted entry, Kasimir sat behind a black ebony desk, fingers interlaced under his chin, ice blue eyes fixed on the trembling figure before him. Lord Thorn, his cousin, was soaked with rain and mud, expensive clothes ruined, hands still trembling from terror and adrenaline. Behind him, two of Kasimir's personal guardsmen who cost a small fortune each, but were worth every coin. Repeat, Kasimir's voice was low, controlled, but there was ice in it that made even brave men sweat. Slowly, every detail, Peter swallowed hard, voice breaking occasionally as he reported. They, They came at midnight. 7 of them, all masked, all dressed in black, attacked from 3 directions simultaneously. The guards had no chance, uncle. It was, It was massacre. 23 men dead in minutes. He wiped sweat from his forehead. The leader, He carried a cane, with Silver Wolf on top. He called himself, Pete's here paused. He called himself the Wolf, and the others. He called them Pack, Fenrir's hounds. Kasimir said, not as a question, but as recognition, finally showing their faces. You've heard of them? Rumors. Kasimir stood, walking to the window overlooking the moonlit gardens. Whispers in the underworld for the last 2 years. Ghost organization that was eating small operations, turning minor allies, absorbing rival gangs. My informants mentioned the name occasionally. But they were too small for serious concern. Or so I thought. He turned, eyes piercing Petir. Apparently, they were just building strength, waiting for the right moment to strike. And they chose Crane as target for maximum impact. They took everything, uncle. All the gold in the safes, all the documents, and ... And they said to bring you a message. Petir faltered, said there are wolves in the shadows now, that no one who works for you is safe, that they'll come after everyone. Heavy silence filled the office. Kasimir turned back to the window, hands crossed behind his back. For a long moment, he didn't speak, simply processed. Then, surprisingly, he laughed. Low sound without real humor. Bold. I have to admit, it's bold. Directly attacking my finances, sending my own cousin back with threats, burning the entire complex as a statement. He tapped fingers against the window glass. Whoever these Fenrir's hounds are, they're not amateurs. This was planned, meticulous, and extremely effective. What will we do? Petir asked, voice still trembling. First, damage control. Kasimir turned, walking to the desk where a map of the capital was spread. He marked the point where Crane's complex was. Is Crane still alive? Yes. They released him too. Then he'll disappear in the next few hours. Find him before that happens. Bring him here. We need to know exactly what they took. Which documents? Cues, his fingers traced lines on the map. Second, increase security at all my properties. Triple guards. No one enters or leaves without complete verification. And third, ... double quotes. He smiled, cold and calculating. Put out a bounty. Large 50,000 in gold for information leading to capture of any Fenrir's Hounds member. 100,000 for the leader, this wolf. That single quotes as ... enormous. Petir blinked. Don't you think it's excessive for an underworld gang? Kasimir laughed again, that sound without warmth. My dear cousin, if this were just a gang, they would have stolen money and disappeared. But no. They sent a deliberate message. They burned everything. They left me alive to spread terror. He struck his hand on the table. This isn't a gang. This is a rival. Someone building an empire to compete with mine. Or worse, ... Double quotes he paused, ... someone specifically trying to destroy me. And I want to know who and why. Petir nodded nervously. And ... And if they attack again, other targets. Let them attack. Kasimir returned to the chair, sitting with relaxed posture that contrasted with the intensity in his eyes. Let them show more of their tactics. Let them reveal more of their capabilities. Every action they take gives me more information. And information is power. He interlaced his fingers. Eventually, they'll make a mistake. Everyone does. And when they do, I'll be waiting. You don't seem worried, Petir observed. Worried? No. Intrigued? Yes. Kasimir smiled. It's been years since anyone had the courage to challenge me directly. It's refreshing. Reminds me that complacency kills more powerful men than swords. He gestured to the door. Now go. Find Crane. Double security. And spread the word. Anyone who works with the hounds will be hunted. No mercy. Petir bowed and left quickly, leaving Kasimir alone with his thoughts. The powerful lord stood again, walking to a locked cabinet. He opened it with a key he always kept with him, revealing more detailed maps, lists of names, networks of connections traced in red ink. His empire, built over decades. Carefully maintained, protected with blood and gold and fear. And now, there were wolves in the shadows, biting at edges, testing defenses. Very well, little wolves. He murmured to himself. You have my attention now. Let's see how far you can run before the dragon fully awakens. He touched the map where Crane's complex was, and when it wakes, wolves will discover that dragons burn everything. The candle on the desk flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls. And in the darkness of the office, Lord Kasimir Devereux began to plan. War had been declared. And he had never lost a war before. He didn't intend to start now. Sunlight filtered through lace curtains, bathing the dining room in soft gold. Breakfast was served with perfection that only years of servant training could achieve. Fresh breads, imported jams, eggs, prepared exactly as Lady Morel preferred. Perfumed tea, rising aromatic steam. Everything perfectly normal, perfectly civilized, perfectly false. Tenil sat at the table wearing noble morning clothes, white linen shirt. Dark blue vest embroidered with House Vorten crest, hair perfectly arranged, impeccable posture. Nothing about him suggested that just 6 hours ago he was covered in blood. Commanding the massacre of 23 men, burning an entire complex to ashes. Lord Tenil Vorten and the wolf were two completely separate worlds. And the mask between them was so perfect that sometimes even he forgot where one ended and the other began. Lady Morel entered, wearing a gray morning dress. She still wore morning tones occasionally. 2 years weren't enough to completely forget. But there was color in her cheeks again, lightness in her steps that had been lacking for so long after the deaths. Good morning, my son. She kissed his forehead lightly before sitting. Good morning, mother, Tenil replied, setting aside the newspaper he'd been reading. Sleep well, reasonably. And you? I heard you coming back late last night. Tenil didn't hesitate, the lie flowing smoothly. Meeting with merchants. About the house's trade routes. Sorry if I woke you. No. I'm happy you're handling business so diligently. She poured tea for both. Your father would be proud of how you've taken on responsibilities, especially considering ... double quotes. She paused, choosing words. Considering it wasn't always your strength. People change, Mother Tenil said softly. Tragedy forces change. Yes, I suppose it does. She drank her tea, then noticed the newspaper. Any interesting news this morning? Tenil picked up the newspaper again, pretending to scan the pages casually. But his eyes had already found the headline he was looking for. Front page. Large and dramatic letters. Brutal attack on Merchant Lord's complex. 23 dead. Thousands stolen. Oh yes. He pointed to the headline. Seems there was considerable violence in the merchant district last night. He read aloud, voice perfectly neutral. In a bold and bloody attack. An unidentified group invaded merchant Lord Davos Crane's commercial complex last night, resulting in the death of 23 guards and workers. Witnesses report that invaders wore black and moved with military coordination. All gold and valuable documents were stolen, and the complex was burned. Authorities believe a criminal organization growing over the last 2 years may be responsible. He put the newspaper back, taking a piece of bread and spreading jam with calmly calculated movements. "How classless," he commented, tone slightly disdainful. "Violence like that, so ... gratuitous. Burning the entire place. Why? Seems like unnecessary excess." Lady Morel was reading over his shoulder, eyebrows furrowed. "Classless, perhaps, but ... double quotes." She paused, fingers tracing the words, ... well orchestrated. "Look here, they attacked from multiple directions, neutralized guards in minutes, knew exactly where the safes were. And witnesses say the leader left a deliberate message before departing." She put her teacup back, thoughtful. This wasn't common robbery. It was a statement. Tenil forced himself to maintain a neutral expression, but inside, admiration for his mother grew. She was intelligent, always had been. He forgot that sometimes, too focused on keeping her in the dark about his activities. "Statement of what?" he asked, maintaining casual tone. "Power, capability, that they're not just common criminals, but an organization with real resources and planning." Lady Morel bit a piece of bread, chewing thoughtfully. "And the timing is interesting too. Davos Crane is ... was very well connected, served many powerful lords. Attacking him now with such force. Someone is sending a message up the chain. Not just to him, but to those he served. You think there's more behind it?" Tenel observed, impressed despite himself. "There always is, dear." She smiled softly. "Violence is rarely just violence in the capital, especially when it's so well executed. There's politics involved, rivalries. Someone is trying to change the balance of power." She paused, then added more quietly, "And I wonder where this will lead. Who else these shadows will reach." Silence fell over the table. Tenil watched his mother, seeing the sharp intelligence he'd never given enough credit. She didn't know details, didn't know about Fenrir, about him being the wolf, about the shadow empire he was building. But she felt the currents changing, saw patterns. And part of her a very small part, but real suspected there was more happening than what she saw on the surface. She just didn't know how close she was to the truth. "I'm sure the authorities will handle it," Tenil said finally, returning to bread and jam. "It's not our concern." "No, I suppose not." Lady Morel agreed, but there was something in her eyes, doubt, curiosity, that made Tenel uncomfortable. But still, "Tenel," she touched his hand lightly. "Be careful. The capital is becoming more dangerous. There are forces moving in shadows we don't always understand. And our house, though rebuilding, is still vulnerable. I don't want to lose more family." "You won't, Mother." Tenel squeezed her hand, and in that moment the promise was genuine. "I promise. I'm careful. Always." She smiled, believing, and the guilt Tenel carried grew a little more. Each lie, each disguise, each moment performing the noble son, while inside he was something completely different. How long until the masks merged completely? Until he no longer knew which was real. But that was a concern for another day. For now, he had a role to play. Attentive son, responsible lord, completely oblivious to the chaos he himself had created just hours ago. "More tea, Mother?" he asked, picking up the teapot. "Yes, please." She pushed her cup forward, and they continued breakfast in perfectly staged normalcy. While outside, the city woke to news of blood in the streets. And in the shadows, wolves were already planning the next hunt. But in the dining room of Vorten Mansion, everything was perfectly civilized, perfectly normal, perfectly false. And so, another chapter of our saga concludes, but the tapestry of time still holds many plots to be unveiled. To not miss the unfolding of upcoming events and continue the journey with us, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. Leave your like so more listeners discover our tales, and share this story with those who also yearn for new legends. What was your favorite moment from this narrative? Leave your comment below and prepare for the next chapter that will soon echo here.